Joining us now from Ramallah, West Bank, is Diana Buttu, political analyst and former advisor to the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas. Diana, thank you very much for being with us. This surprise for everyone, announcement by President Trump on Tuesday that the United States should be taking Gaza, moving everybody out, and then rebuilding it. How is that being perceived by Palestinians?
Well, it's ethnic cleansing, and I think it's important to label it what exactly it is. Look, the Israelis have long been advocating and pushing for ethnic cleansing. It didn't start today. It's been ongoing since 1948. And when this genocide began in October of 2023, the Israeli prime minister made it clear that Gaza was going to be smaller in size and thinner in population. That means ethnic cleansing. And so now we hear a U.S. president that is not punishing the perpetrators of this genocide, but is instead rewarding them by saying that he is also going to be complicit in this and that he's going to be part and parcel of moving, ethnically cleansing Palestinians out from Gaza. And so this is very problematic. And one would hope that we would see that there would be an international reaction against these policies of genocide and ethnic cleansing, but I simply don't see it.
So when we're talking genocide and ethnic cleansing, you're talking about what happened in October 2023. You're talking about the October 7th massacre, or what happened after that October 7th massacre with the reality in Gaza since?
Well, obviously, I'm talking about what Israel has done since. We're now looking at more than 62,000 Palestinians that have been killed by the Israeli army. We see that 90% of the buildings in the Gaza Strip are completely decimated. The hospital system has been destroyed. And so this has been a systematic process of genocide that international organizations and others have been saying is genocide. So the problem here is that unless we address the issue of Israel's genocide of Palestinians by holding Israeli officials accountable, what we're instead doing, what the United States is instead doing, is saying that genocide is okay. It's okay for Israel to commit genocide and to allow the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. That is not only illegal under international law, it's immoral. And I can't believe that we're even having this conversation.
Well, we're having a conversation because when you talk about genocide, it's the elimination of an entire people. And I don't know if that would be something that one could define in what has been going on in the war between Israel and Hamas, a war that started on 7th of October when 1,200 men, women, and children were killed, massacred, and raped in their own country. But Diana, one of the things that President Trump said is that there is, if you repeat the same things over and over again, you're condemned to essentially have the same outcome. And I'm just wondering, what would be a different outcome for the people of Gaza? What would be a different outcome for the people that do want to live in peace, in harmony, without being in an act or state of war forever?
Well, first, I want to correct you about this idea of what genocide is. And what genocide is not the entire elimination of people, but it is the practice of people that is expressed both in intent and in action of making sure that they have no means of life. And so this isn't just the words that I've been uttering, but it's also the International Court of Justice. We also have indictments by the International Criminal Court against Prime Minister Netanyahu. And so what is happening is, in fact, genocide. The issue, though, to get to your point about what is it that people want, it's important for us to recognize that to simply focus on one day, meaning October the 7th, is the height of dehumanization against Palestinians. It's to ignore the history of Israel's actions against them, the ethnic cleansing of 1948, the ongoing ethnic cleansing process in the West Bank, and all of the settlements, everything that they've done since. So if we want to move forward, I think we have to address the root causes. And that root cause is that people have not been able to go to their homes. And I'm not simply talking about inside the Gaza Strip, but the people of the Gaza Strip, 80% of them are actually descendants from places that are nearby Gaza. They've never been allowed to go because
the
they're
people
not
that live in
Jewish.
camps in Beirut and have been there for generations, many
Correct.
of
So they
them.
go home. They should come back to Palestine. That's the whole point, and that's the essence of it. And if we simply look for these band-aid solutions of somehow throwing people here, throwing people there, ethnic cleansing here, ethnic cleansing there, that's not going to get to the root cause. The root cause was the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in 1948, and it's time for them to come back.
So, your concept, and I'm trying to, is that the existence of Israel, the existence of the Jewish state in 1948, is per se ethnic cleansing. No, would you?
Israel
shouldn't exist.
Yes, Israel was built on the lands of Palestinians. It was built through an ethnic cleansing process. It was built through the expulsion of 75% of the Palestinian population. That's ethnic cleansing. And what Palestinians have been asking for is what is internationally recognized, their right to return. They want to come back to their home. They want to come back to their land, and they haven't been able to do so. So if you have a state that is fundamentally premised on one people's superiority, Jewish superiority, there's something wrong with that. And I think we really have to start taking this on.
Well, I appreciate you being on with us. I look forward to our continued conversations. I thank you.